Welcome into the channel. Let's talk some Texans. Late night Texans. Or the next day, if you're watching this, we appreciate that as well. Plenty to get to as CJ Stroud is officially the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll talk about his performance in New Orleans against the Saints. The left guard, that might be happening with this team right now, and a defensive deficiency that this team may have to deal with in the coming weeks and maybe throughout all of 2023. All that and so much more here on the YouTube right now. Appreciate you watching live. Appreciate you catching it after the fact. If you've never been here before, I'm Cody Stoots. I'd appreciate a like on the video down below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd also appreciate a subscription to the channel as well if you're not subscribed already. And please check out Houston Football, my website where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans. www.houfootball.com is where you can find that. So, plenty to get to on the live. Let's start with the official announcement. CJ Stroud is quarterback number 1, QB1. What a way to finish up the preseason for CJ Stroud. We talked about what did we want to see heading into that final preseason game, and the only thing that was left on the agenda, it felt like, was throw the ball deep and score a touchdown. And what did we see? Sunday night against the Saints, the Texans threw the ball deep. It just so happens the Saints DB made a really good play on the ball, and then they scored a touchdown with CJ Stroud leading the touchdown drive, as well as Dameon Pierce helping out a ton. Not a ton to go over with CJ Stroud's performance, just a handful of throws on the night, but all of them getting a thumbs up from me. Loved the deep shot to Nico Collins, thought the ball placement was really good, and really, as I watched that play over and over and over again, when I got home and started paying attention and was like, I could get the rewind going and all that kind of stuff, I don't know that the Saints DB even knew where the ball was. I think he just threw his hand up and ended up with an accidental good play on that. The Robert Woods play, initially when I watched it, you see CJ Stroud with a bunch of open area in front of him. I felt like he probably could have taken off. I understand why you go ahead and make that throw instead of taking off, but I thought he could have taken off there and maybe got that first down. But as I watched it over and over again, and I'll need to see it on the end zone view for sure, but it looked like there was a defender that kind of was headed towards CJ Stroud and might have been able to catch him on an angle where he wasn't getting the first down. So I understand why you make that throw. Robert Woods looked like he was complaining to the official about being held, or at the very least a hold, maybe a pass interference. I certainly understand him griping about that. And I see his gripe after watching that play a couple of times. I also believe that that's a play Robert Woods makes probably 7 out of 10 times. So that was one of the 3 times where Woods doesn't catch that football. So not too upset with that one. And then the Dalton Schultz play. I mean, there's a defender kind of bearing down in his face. He finds Schultz. It's a beautiful route by Schultz. If you go back and watch that, he kind of starts, cuts back in. Stroud puts it where Schultz can kind of reach up and grab it. He rips it out of the air. First down, and then the easiest throw of the night, the little boop to Nico Collins off the play action. Thanks to Dameon Pierce for running for, 25 of his 30 yards on that drive so that you could set up that play action. It would be a very easy play. So that's it. That's the finale for CJ Stroud. He finishes preseason with 1 interception in the first game, 1 touchdown in the last game. But again, we've talked at length about CJ Stroud's preseason. It all just needs to be steps forward. And what did he do on Sunday against the Saints? He took another step forward. Not all these steps are giant leaps. They're not long jumps. Some of them are just little itty-bitty steps forward, but he's taking those steps forward and heading in the direction that he needs to go. He commands this offense well, and I'm excited to see, with a full array of offense, I'm excited to see what CJ Stroud can do with this team. I believe Tank Dell was held out of the first team reps on purpose because the Texans don't want to showcase Stroud and Tank Dell like we've seen in practice a couple of different times to this point, like we've talked about on this channel a few different times. They didn't want to showcase that Stroud and Dell have clicked. I also felt like it was a very important piece of information that Kevin Burkhardt on the broadcast just slid in there about Dalton Schultz, how he and CJ Stroud are already thinking the same things, already on the same page. They've created this bond and this connection, and that was a little bit deeper than I think the both of them expected to get to. So I thought that was a nice little bit by Kevin Burkhardt. And you saw what can happen when this rushing attack gets going. The running attack was much better than it was a week ago. So Dameon Pierce is out there. He's a battering ram. He's a hammer, whatever weapon you want to call him. He goes out there and takes care of business to sort of set up that play action that you saw for the touchdown with a full complement of offensive weapons and with the full playbook. I'm excited to see what CJ Stroud, Bobby Slowick, the rest of the offense can all put together on Sundays. That is going to be a fun watch. And the preseason finishes up, and my goodness, would we be hearing about it if CJ Stroud was the only set-to-start rookie that didn't throw a touchdown in the preseason. He throws that touchdown. Check almost every box. Check almost every box for CJ Stroud here in the preseason. Not every box, but almost every box for CJ Stroud. Loved it. Big thumbs up on his preseason. Steps forward. He hasn't taken a step back in weeks. Great to see. We'll talk about the issue at left guard here in just a moment, but let's get to some of your comments. Of course, if you have something that you would very much like to get to, then the super chat is available to you as well. All right. Rick, appreciate you jumping in. Damian, thank you for jumping in. Texans need to sign Dalton Reisner ASAP. I do wonder if cutdown day, which is Tuesday, and over the next couple of days, you'll see a lot of teams start to cut players. In fact, teams started cutting players today or on Sunday, or I guess yesterday at this point. And so Sunday cuts started to happen. As players start to cycle through, there's going to be 1,000 players plus cut from these teams. And then about 500 of them find practice squad jobs. So there could be some depth there. I do wonder if the left guard situation is going to be a solved in-house type thing. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Devin, appreciate you hopping in. Sean G, appreciate you jumping in here. Julian, appreciate the comment, man. You're crazy. Always putting out content late hours of the night. Yeah, it works out great. We put up a video. We have some live stuff here. And then if you don't catch it live, you're catching it the next day. Fun stuff. Spooky Scoobs, EJ Perry's QB2. EJ Perry balled out there in the final little bit of preseason. Good to see from him. EJ Perry, I don't believe is going to be on this team. Practice squad guy? Yeah, maybe. But Case Keenum, Davis Mills, and then QB1, CJ Stroud is going to be your guy. Julian, I like our running back room. Boone is awesome. Looks like an angry runner too. Yeah, the success of the angry runs seems to be high with this team. And you bring in Singletary shiftiness that he's brought to the table. I've seen a couple of times at practices in the couple of weeks. And we saw it in the game. We saw it in the game when Singletary, I think it was the Patriots game where he shifted, basically to the right and was able to turn a loss into a gain. So big thumbs up on what they have going in the running back room. I believe they're going to keep 4. I don't know exactly who that 4th guy is. I suppose it's Dare Ogunbowale, but if somebody really good popped up, you might want to move on from Dare Ogunbowale and find somebody else to be that 4th running back. Devin weighs in with the super chat. Appreciate you, Devin. With how tonight went, it's going to be a long 2 weeks. Yes, it is, but it will go by in a hurry, and it'll be here before you know it. And I would appreciate all of you hitting that thumbs up on this video right now and subscribing to the channel because we have a ton of preview content ahead of the season. We have things like stat projections for the Texans over the course of the season. Do we believe that they're going to happen? They go higher or lower on some of these stat projections. We will have a live win-win, loss game on the channel before things are all said and done. We will have plenty of stuff and have plenty of opportunities to hang out and pass these 14 days as fast as we can. So stick around and hang out with the channel. I appreciate everybody for swinging by live tonight. And if you're watching after the fact, thank you as well. Could Boone give Singletary a run for his money at RB2? No, I don't think so. Singletary is a guy that has had a couple of 800-yard, 1,000-yard, 1,000 total yards, 800 total yard seasons. And Boone's looked nice in preseason, but he's not better than Singletary. Is it Cam Dantzler versus Shaq Griffin? I'm not sure what that last cornerback spot's going to look like. I'm not sure. I mean, Cam Dantzler, for getting signed a few days ago, certainly came to play. Yeah, they're mostly close practices. So it'll be 20 minutes of viewing, which is usually stretches and a little individual. So there's no giant observations popping out from that. If Xavier Hutchinson was on the bubble before the game, I think he made the team tonight. Yeah, you don't want to use too much recency bias on these guys and kind of jump things that way. Sometimes the final preseason game and where it is matters. Sometimes it doesn't. That's a nice little addition to Xavier Hutchinson's preseason, though, and I would think he's certainly on the team with the investment that they made from a draft pick perspective and some of the plays that he's made over the totality of the preseason. I would think that we've got a pretty good shot for Xavier Hutchinson to end up on this team. I'm not worried about him being on the bubble or anything. Let's talk about this left guard situation that the Texans are dealing with now. So in this game, Michael Dieter gets the start at left guard. And when he started at left guard, I wondered if perhaps Kenyon Green was hurt or Kenyon Green was not going to play in this game. Nope, Kenyon Green played, and he played with the second team unit. So if you're unfamiliar with who Michael Dieter is, I know we've mentioned his name a couple of times on some of the videos on the channel, but if you're unfamiliar with Michael Dieter, he's a mid-round pick from the Miami Dolphins who signed as a free agent with the Texans this past offseason. And Dieter has been a sometimes starter, sometimes backup for this team. He didn't play a ton last year for the Miami Dolphins. He's played a little bit of all of the offensive line positions. And in fact, he played a little left tackle for the Texans in training camp a time or two. He's played in Wisconsin. He was a really good college player. It hasn't quite clicked at the NFL level for him, but you saw him out there with Laramie Tunsil to his left, Juice Scruggs to his right, Shaq Mason and George Fant rounding out that offensive line. And then Kenyon Green was playing with the second team. And yes, that looks strange. And yes, that's absolutely bad for Kenyon Green. And that's bad for Kenyon Green's chances to be the starting left guard. And that's bad for the investment that this organization has made into Kenyon Green, which is a first-round pick and the first pick that the organization had conveyed from the Cleveland Browns in the Deshaun Watson trade. Those are all bad signs for Kenyon Green. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Dieter was rotating at left guard with Kenyon Green, and I asked D'Amico Ryans about it, and Ryan said that it was simply just, hey, a rotation. Guys are on snap counts sometimes, and in certain situations, you want to get guys opportunities and see how they look. He said something similar tonight where, hey, we wanted to see what Michael Dieter looked like with the first team. He said he deserved that opportunity with the first team, and he even made a comment later when asked about the offensive line further. They're going to do whatever they need to do to make sure this offensive line is playing the best it can. Now, if that's starting Michael Dieter because he's a better pass blocker than Kenyon Green, do it. I don't care about the investment in Kenyon Green anymore. The most important thing when it comes to the offensive line is protecting C.J. Stroud. The second most important thing is making sure that rushing attack is up to snuff so that C.J. Stroud in the passing attack can be a really impressive passing attack. So if Michael Dieter is the better option for this team at left guard than Kenyon Green, by all means, do that. I wonder if that's a wake-up call to Kenyon Green where you let him know, if you don't get it done week 1 in Baltimore, week 2 against the Indianapolis Colts, Michael Dieter's going to be in there. And maybe that decision has already been made. When the franchise quarterback is out there, you put the 5 best guys out there to protect him. Certainly after what we saw in week 1 against the New England Patriots, they were going to put the 5 best offensive linemen out there to protect C.J. Stroud. If Dieter's one of those guys, play him. I don't care about the investment to Kenyon Green. I don't believe Green's getting shown the door because there's some financial ramifications to cutting a guy in the second year of his rookie contract. I don't believe that's the case. And if this is just a, hey, wake up moment for Kenyon Green, then maybe it works and you get Kenyon Green dialed in here in the next 13 days, and you have a guy that's ready to play at left guard. Plus, from a depth perspective, I'd much rather have a guy that's played a little bit than maybe throwing Jarrett Patterson in there or putting Patterson at center and putting Juice Scruggs at left guard. I don't want to do a ton of messing around. If Dieter's the best guy, play Dieter. If Dieter's not the best guy, play Kenyon Green. If neither of those guys are the best guys, what the hell happened? Why isn't there a better option? That's where I'm at with the left guard situation. The investment in Kenyon Green, the conversation about Green, I mean, it's not a good one right now. How could it be? In the final preseason game, he can't even start. And this isn't about like, oh, let's just see what Dieter can do. No. This is protecting QB1, okay? This is protecting QB1. It's going to be very hard for me to see Kenyon Green march out there week 1 against Baltimore with any level of confidence in Kenyon Green. The totality of the line, maybe they make some things work. The totality of the line, there's some talent there. The Tunsil and Scruggs can maybe make up for Green to an extent, but play the 5 best offensive linemen. It is imperative that the 5 best offensive linemen play against the Baltimore Ravens. And the following week, the 5 best offensive linemen need to play against the Indianapolis Colts, and so on and so forth down the line. So, bad news for Kenyon Green that he's not starting in the final preseason game when basically all the starters got opportunities to play. Even worse news for him that he is playing, and it's with the second team. So, Kenyon Green and that left guard spot, it is something to monitor heavily in the next 13 days and pay attention to as we get ready to see the Texans take on the Baltimore Ravens in week 1 in 13 days. Kenyon Green got absolutely cooked. Yeah, it didn't help that once he got in the game, he didn't look very good. How was Green so confident and productive against SEC competition to merit a mid-first round pick and be so thoroughly awful at this level so soon? Being blunt, the guy is horrible. So Kenyon Green probably didn't warrant that mid-first round pick. I saw a lot of draft prognosticators that had him as a late first round pick, maybe even a second round pick. So he might have been ultimately an overdraft where Nick Caserio got him. And I do believe that stretch in his rookie season where it was Jeffrey Simmons and the Eagles defensive lineman and Dexter Lawrence and Jeffrey Simmons again, and then the Commanders defensive lineman. That stretch to me hurt Kenyon Green's confidence, and I don't know that he's ever totally bounced back. Plus, it feels like his body's betraying him. There's always something wrong. Even when he got beat in the game, he's holding his left arm. So it feels like his body has betrayed him to this point. And if he's not the best left guard, don't play him. If he's not the best left guard, don't play him. Jose weighs in. Josh Jones, if you haven't heard that name, he's the new tackle that the team acquired from the Arizona Cardinals. Josh Jones also plays guard. Give him some time to learn the playbook. He could be the guy. So, yes, Jones did play guard in Arizona for the Cardinals. The tough part about that is he sucked at guard in Arizona for the Cardinals. So, hopefully you don't have to play him. Look, best case scenario is the investment in Kenyon Green pays off. He gets his head on straight, and he goes out there, and he's a serviceable left guard. Second best case scenario is that Dieter goes in there, and he's better than Kenyon Green, and you can worry about him. After that, the scenarios get very scary and very hard to see how we feel really good about any of those. So it's a scary spot to be in if Kenyon Green or Michael Dieter can't hold down that left guard spot. Okay? It's a real weird and scary spot to be in because then you're coming through with maybe moving Scruggs over or playing Jarrett Patterson, who missed a good portion of camp with an injury. Or you're getting some guy off the street who doesn't know the offense. So, lot to worry about at that left guard spot over the next 13 days or so. And I saw somebody in the comments, and it's D. Paul. I don't think there's any way you can put Kenyon Green out there against Baltimore. You got put in a spin cycle by the New Orleans backup. Yeah, everybody has a bad rep, but Kenyon Green's had a bunch of them. So it's a really weird spot to be in for the new coaching staff because they didn't draft this guy. So their job is to play the best guy. And if you're Nick Caserio, you got to be looking around like, hey, my guy's not getting it done. My guy's not getting it done. And how can Kenyon Green be so bad? The injuries have sapped him, Ayan. The injuries have sapped him a little bit, so that they've taken the toll on him. And I feel like because some of the injuries have limited experience and maybe injured his confidence, that's where we find ourselves with Kenyon Green having such a rough stretch here in the NFL. So keep throwing your questions in there. I'll star them if we don't get to them here. But there is one thing that I'm looking at and I'm thinking about coming out of this preseason game that worries me a little bit for this early stretch here of the season. Okay? I feel like the Texans defense has a little tight end trouble. So go back to joint practices, and in joint practices, Durham Smythe, and you're like, Cody, who is Durham Smythe? Durham Smythe, who is the starting tight end for the Miami Dolphins, had a couple of really big days in joint practices. Wasn't as good in the preseason game, but he was really nice in joint practices. Okay? So Durham Smythe looked nice in joint practices, the tight end from Miami. You saw Jimmy Graham turn back the clock against the Texans in this game against starters, Christian Harris. Now, I know DeMeco Ryans said after the game, hey, Jimmy Graham just made a great play. I'm not faulting Christian Harris for that. Okay, that's fine. But there may be some tight end troubles with this defense, and that may be where some of these opposing offensive coordinators go to attack DeMeco Ryans' defense. And you start thinking about who these tight ends are the Texans are going to play over the first few weeks. Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Pat Freiermuth, Kyle Pitts. You get Jimmy Graham and the starter in New Orleans again. And you look at this early stretch here, you think about, oh, well, Durham Smythe and Jimmy Graham had some success, and then you jump up to the top of the tight end situation. It's something I'm going to be paying attention to. It's something that I'm interested to ask DeMeco Ryans, Matt Burke about tight ends, how you go about that, how you pay attention to defending them. But it's just something, like, put a pin in it, and if we're sitting here in 13 days for a post-game show and Mark Andrews has just absolutely dominated this Texans defense, and then 2 weeks later, Evan Ingram does it, and then a week after that, Pat Freiermuth does it, we'll think back like, oh, man, we saw this all in the preseason with Durham Smythe, whoever the hell that is, and Jimmy Graham taking care of business, okay? So just put a pin in that, something to pay attention to with the tight end situation from the Texans' defensive perspective. The tight end situation on the offensive perspective is an issue too. We can talk about that here in this portion. It's time for the Q&A. If I haven't got to your question, I will try to go back and get to it. I've starred some of these questions to get back to those. Fire away with your questions. We'll go for a little while here. It's late. I appreciate everybody staying up. And if you're watching this after the fact, we got some Q&A here at the back end of the show to get to a various amount of topics. Chung Fung, where's Johnston? So that's Cam Johnston, the punter for the Texans. And this actually becomes I don't want to say tenuous situation, but as far as roster movements go, the conversation about Cam Johnston's an interesting one. If he's injured to the point where he needs to miss Baltimore, or he needs to miss a few weeks of the season, but not necessarily go on the PUP list or IR designated to return, then maybe you're carrying two punters for a couple of days. And if that's the case, you're limiting yourself one roster spot. Or perhaps you're carrying a backup punter on the practice squad, and that takes away a practice squad guy. But Johnston's hurt right now. Remains to be seen if he's going to be healthy. We'll know he's healthy if they totally get rid of the punter and don't bring the guy back. On the practice squad. If they get rid of this new punter and bring him back on the practice squad, then perhaps Johnston's not going to be good to go for week 1, maybe week 2, something like that. And then you're thinking about, okay, moving pieces on the roster. Like the final days here of the roster building, because you got to think about it this way. There's 50 spots on the roster. I know it's a 53-man roster, but you have a punter, a kicker, and a long snapper. So there's 50 spots on the roster. Now, if all of a sudden you're down to 49 because you're carrying an extra punter, and then you're down to 48 because Titus Howard's going to be on the roster because he's not going to miss a ton of time. Maybe if he misses any time, it's Baltimore. So now you're down to 48. And if Andrew Beck is not back, but he's not hurt to any long extent, or he's not going to miss any long time, they're down to 47. So now you're 3 non-specialist spots short because of just guys banged up, not injured to where they need to go on IR or anything like that, but just banged up. And you don't want to put a bunch of guys on IR. That's 4-week minimum that they got to miss. And then you only get X number of guys to come back. So it's something to monitor. It starts with Johnston, but Titus Howard plays into it. Beck plays into it. There's plenty of things to pay attention to. Rick weighs in. Schultz was a badass. Number 2 is up in the air. Yeah, maybe it's Tegan Quintiriano. Maybe it's Andrew Beck as that fullback tight end hybrid. Outside of that, I don't know exactly who's in the tight end 2 conversation. I do believe if the correct veteran becomes available, the Texans will add a veteran tight end. I do believe they will add a veteran tight end if the right guy becomes available. J.S. Riley, shout out to my man Graylin Arnold being absolutely everywhere in the second half. Yes, and he was on the postgame show with Texans radio, and they asked him, hey, you going to remember the interception? You're going to remember the ones that were almosts. And he was laughing. He's I'm going to remember the interception. And Arnold's had a couple of nice plays. The numbers game might work against him here, but a practice squad opportunity for him, certainly. Sonny says, Xavier Hutchinson stock up. Yes, that is true. That's true. So Hutchinson finishing on a high note. You'd love to finish on a high note here. Sean G, opposing tight ends may only be as good as the QBs throwing them the ball. Good point. But Mark Andrews has Lamar Jackson. That's a thumbs-up combo for me. Evan Ingram has Trevor Lawrence. That's a thumbs-up combo for me. Kenny Pickett has Pat Freiermuth. That's a thumbs-sideways combo for me because I don't like Kenny Pickett. I don't believe in Kenny Pickett and his little bitty tiny hands. I don't believe in Kenny Pickett, so that's a thumb sideways for me. And then Carr and Graham and the other starter, that's a combo I'll be interested to watch. Again, let's just put a pin in the tight ends versus the Texans defense and pay attention to it here in a few weeks. Riffic of Wave Mechanics. What about Cowart and Davis? So Cowart is Byron Cowart, who's a defensive tackle, wears number 90, which is Jadeveon Clowney and Ross Blacklock's old number. And then Davis is number 94, Khalil Davis, who's a defensive tackle who was signed about midway through camp. Both have the opportunity to be on the practice squad. I don't believe they're going to be on the 53-man roster, but both have practice squad potential. And when you start thinking about, okay, Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins as the starter, Hassan Ridgeway as the first backup, Roy Lopez and Kurt Heinisch, there's 5 guys. And then if you add Davis to the practice squad, that's 6 pretty nice defensive tackles for your 53-man plus practice squad defensive tackle room. So I'm thumbs up on keeping Davis or even Cowart, or if the practice squad shakes out the right way, keep them both if you can or you want to. Spooky Scoops, what are your thoughts on E.J. Perry? E.J. Perry was here so that Case Keenum didn't have to play down the stretch. I don't believe E.J. Perry is going to be a future piece of this organization in any way, shape, or form. If he is, he's on the practice squad as sort of a scout team quarterback. But yes, E.J. Perry played pretty well here in this final preseason game, and you always want to leave a good impression in everybody's mouth. Cody, CJ didn't run a lot of Ohio State. Are you worried he won't if he's got a lane? So the play today is a good question, Jim. The play today, I believe there's a player coming at him. I will tell you this. If CJ Stroud can make the throw or make a throw, he's going to try to make the throw That's just the type of quarterback it feels like he is at this point. I saw it in joint practices. We've seen it in the preseason games. If he can make a throw, he's going to try to make the throw. When there's no throw available, I feel like Stroud's taking off. I'm not worried about him avoiding it. It does not scare me about his game. We will see him run the football as a weapon, not as a design, but as a weapon. J.S. Riley has a super chat. I appreciate you for weighing in. Thanks for the late night content. You're the best on the Texans. Landry, a close second with a wink. J.S., thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. Landry is a great friend of mine. Actually, today we just had our 14th year of our fantasy football draft that I and he and a bunch of our friends are in. And Landry does a great job. I encourage you to check out his channel. He does some fantastic content as well. We go a lot of times at different times, so you're able to consume both levels of content. I appreciate you saying I'm the best. I don't believe I'm the best, but the goal is to one day be the best. And if you're always chasing a goal like that, you feel like you're going to have some success. So, JS, I appreciate you. Thank you. Very kind, and helps the channel a lot, and I thank you so much. Say Boogie with a super chat. Hey, man, thank you. I appreciate that. If you got a question, throw it in there. Oh, here we go. He's got the question. Appreciate the super chat. Let's get to it, Say Boogie. Okay, Stoots, now the preseason is over and the critical assessment of these players have come to an end. How would you assess the coaching staff's first preseason individually and as a whole? So I like what Bobby Slowick has done. He has showcased some of what you can come to expect from this offense. And that was one of the biggest questions of the preseason. What will Slowick show and how can he show it? And clearly the work that he, along with quarterback coach Gerard Johnson and some of the other offensive minds, clearly the work has showcased with CJ Stroud's improvement. So I like what I've seen from the offensive coaches to this point, and certainly with the coaches that are going to be closely associated and closely working with CJ Stroud. So I like what they have brought to the table. I like what a lot of the defense has done. The defensive linemen seem to be clicking really well, and they've got about a 5, 6, 7-man, kind of rotation that they kind of go through that they seem to trust. So I like what the defensive line has done. The linebackers, so Lane Kiffin's brother is the linebackers coach, Chris Kiffin. Obviously, D'Amico goes over there and coaches them up. That's his old position. So thumbs up on the linebackers to this point. The DBs, Dino Vasso's still on this team and some of the other DB coaches. DBs, some thumbs up for them. And then Burke kind of popping around wherever he needs to go. Remember, Matt Burke was J.J. Watt's last defensive line coach. So, I like Burke. I like talking to him as the defensive coordinator that speaks each week. He didn't call the plays tonight. D'Amico called the plays. But I like this coaching staff to this point. I don't see a huge deficiency in this coaching staff just yet. But the real assessment starts of, hey, when you have, you keep it small on purpose in the preseason. You don't want to show anything, and you don't know what everybody's capable of doing quite yet. You got 13 days, and then it's option overload. You can do hopefully whatever you want with your offense and your defense, with your play calls. That's something to pay attention to is, now with everything at their disposal, what exactly will this coaching staff be able to accomplish? CJ looked like a starter tonight from Zinister. CJ is the starter. QB1 on the roster now. So what comes with QB1? It's a good question that nobody actually asked, but I'll tell you, we'll hear from CJ Stroud every week at the podium. So as long as he's healthy and starting, CJ Stroud will speak every week at the podium. I believe it's going to be on Wednesdays. I believe that's typically when the quarterback talks. So Wednesdays will be CJ Stroud Day with the offense. So you'll hear from the starting quarterback every week, and I'm excited to see what and how CJ Stroud approaches that press conference. Does he give us a little bit? Can you get a little bit deeper into some of the things that he has talked about? I'm excited to see CJ at the podium every week. Kenneth, miss you on the radio. If Kenyon Green doesn't have it, I hope they acknowledge that and don't just let him take up a roster spot just because he was a first-round pick. Do what you need to do. There's not somebody who's a better back, like played better than both Dieter and Kenyon Green to be the backup or to challenge either of them for the starter. I mean, there's some salary cap ramifications to keeping him around. Plus, if Dieter goes out there and goes down in Baltimore, who are you running up there? Jared Patterson? And I'd rather run Kenyon out there, but who knows? The famous Rick Rum has made an appearance here in the chat. If you've seen some of these, Rick is quite the rum fan. Creates his own rum. Which linebacker doesn't make the roster? Jake Hansen. I believe Jake Hansen will get shown the door. I feel like your 5 linebackers are Christian Harris, Denzel Perryman, Corey Littleton, Henry To'o, and Blake Cashman. That's not necessarily the order, but those are the 5 linebackers for this team. Spooky Scoops. Boone is shifty AF. Boone's been nice in preseason for what you want out of a third running back. Kenneth, what wide receivers are starting and what other ones do you believe are making the team? So I believe your first 3 that are going to go out there are Robert Woods, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. Noah Brown's going to make the team. John Mechie's going to make the team. And then Xavier Hutchinson's going to make the team. So those are your 6. Now, if somebody's banged up, John Mechie didn't play tonight, and they need some time on the IR or something like that, and you make 5, you got 5 wide receivers, just, drop one of those guys off. Steven Sims has had a nice preseason, not enough to make the team, I don't believe. Same with pretty much any of the other pass catchers. Zach asks, how's your fantasy team looking? I did not love my fantasy draft. So I did not love my fantasy draft. It was not good. I ended up with the 10th pick in a 12-team league. And Tyreek Hill fell to me, thank goodness. But I didn't love the players after that. Josh Jacobs, I wasn't a huge fan, but I kind of felt like I had to take him. Calvin Ridley, Trevor Lawrence, DK Metcalf. I ended up with Darren Waller. Like, there's some potential, but I didn't love my team. It's tough. But we'll talk some fantasy on the channel from time to time, probably on Fridays. Get everybody ready for the weekend. And there'll be some fantasy content on Houston football as well. If you guys don't know about Houston football, the link is in the description. It's where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans. There will always be free content on the site. Some of the articles are totally free. Some of them are partially free. And then the paid content is fantastic. It starts at just $7 a month. $7 a month gets you all the paid content plus some other bonuses as well. I encourage you to check it out. If you haven't, the link is down below, or you can just go to www.houfootball.com. Rick, Slowick's whole gig is timing. CJ releases before guys make their cuts. Love it. Yes, you saw this with the Robert Woods throw to the sideline against the Dolphins. I mean, CJ was here, and then Woods hadn't even turned towards the sideline just yet. Venom 10, love the content. Cody, what are your thoughts on Green getting embarrassed against the Saints? Not good. Not good for him. Not good for the situation at left guard. Not good. Who do you think truly called? Who do you truly think called defensive plays this preseason? D'Amico or Matt? I hear Matt called the plays against the Patriots. So Matt Burke's the defensive coordinator. He called the plays the first 2 games. It looked to me like D'Amico Ryans was calling the plays tonight. And I believe D'Amico Ryans will call the plays in the regular season. I don't know why, but I felt like the playbook opened just a smidge on offense and defense. At this point, if you're one of the coordinators, it's hard to not kind of just get in there just a little bit and try to, get a little bit, peel off just a little piece of what you're capable of doing against these defenses and offenses. Will Tank Dell be the main punt/kick returner? I don't believe so. I almost feel like that's something they're going to run out there in special situations and maybe just flat out try to scare the opposing special teams by running Tank Dell out there. But I don't believe he's going to go out there on a regular basis as the punt and kick returner. Jets TGTX. Why no first team Tank Dell snaps? Okay. This is a great question. It presents an incredible opportunity. Hold on one second. Now, do you guys remember last week when we were talking about the Saints and we were talking about the joint practices getting canceled? And I had to make a makeshift tinfoil hat. Okay? Had to make a makeshift tinfoil hat out of like the wrapping of my breadcrumbs. So I got an Amazon package and somebody sent me tinfoil. So this presents the perfect opportunity, like a little tinfoil hat here. This presents the perfect opportunity for me to answer this question. Why were there no first team snaps for Tank Dell? I believe, as you see here, that the conspiracy theory is the Texans didn't want to show that CJ Stroud and Tank Dell have clicked. They didn't want to showcase that Stroud and Dell are on the same page and have been fantastic in practice, including against the Dolphins in joint practice, 3 touchdowns in the red zone in 1 team period. So, conspiracy theory Cody has his tinfoil hat on, and he says the Texans did not want to show off that Stroud and Tank Dell are on the same page. That is my conspiracy theory. And whoever sent me the conspiracy theory hats for Conspiracy Theory Cody, thank you. I don't know who sent them to me, but I greatly appreciate them. Plus, if I ever have to take a shower, I have a new shower cap as well. So that's my conspiracy theory Cody. And Conspiracy Theory Cody will make appearances with the conspiracy theory hats from this point forward. So thank you, whoever sent me the conspiracy theory hats. That was very nice of you. And it will come in handy. It will come in handy. Thank you for the question. After the preseason, which position do you feel is the strongest? Can I cheat and say left tackle because Laramie Tunsil's awesome? That's not really what you asked. I like the secondary. So in totality, corners and safeties. And if I had to pick between corners and safeties, cornerbacks. They go 4 deep, 5 deep, so cornerbacks. Do you see them making more moves to help some of the deeper positions like DB before cuts? If the right opportunity popped up for, say, Shaq Griffin for another player at another position, maybe you go about those things. You got to like the depth, though, in the secondary right now. 5 deep at corner with Stingley and Nelson, Tavier Thomas, Desmond King, and Shaq Griffin. And then the safeties, Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie, Eric Murray, and MJ Stewart. Like, you got to like the depth. Who do you want on the practice squad? It's a good question. Steven Sims, if you can get him there. Jake Hansen, if you can get him there. Khalil Davis, and maybe even Byron Cowart. Graylin Arnold. That's a start. That's what I'd try to get done. That's what I'd try to get done. CJ TD pass to Nico. The O-line looked amazing on that play. Yeah, the O-line, they didn't allow hardly any pressure to They didn't allow hardly any pressure to C.J. Stroud. So it's a real good job by the offensive line once the starters got in there and played, even though, maybe Michael Dieter's a starter, maybe he's not. Anderson did play. Brevin Jordan and Kirko are dunzo here in the H. Yeah, I would think so. I would think that Christian Kirksey and Brevin Jordan are both getting shown the door. Okay, so this is funny because this is a kind. I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. If you watch professional wrestling back in the day, they used to do this. They used to have a Foley is good, or they used to say Foley is God for Mick Foley. But then they would the signs would always throw in an extra 0, and then they ended up putting it on a T-shirt, but they'd always put in an extra O so that it ended up as good instead of God, because Mick Foley, I guess, didn't like getting called, a god. But that's what this made me think of. You're kind. Thank you for the kind words. Say ya boogie. I'm here for D'Amico Ryans as head coach. Fully support and trust his ability to develop this young team. But what do you think is behind the reluctance to name CG QB1 versus CJ will be our week 1 starter? It's the same thing. Davis Mills ain't starting. Davis Mills ain't playing unless CJ Stroud's significantly hurt. It's all the same thing to me. It's all the same thing to me. And this was all a formality. He's been the first team quarterback for a month. I mean, he's taken all the snaps. This was all a formality. What position do you think they'll address first in waivers when the cuts happen to come up? If an awesome offensive lineman showed up, I suppose you go offensive lineman. I think, Sean, you kind of have the same question here. Defensive end, if the right defensive end showed up, suppose you'd chase that. RB4, so running back 4, maybe a guy that can play a little special teams and can also run the rock a little bit, so running back 4. And then the biggest one is tight end. If the right tight end shows up, I believe they're going to go grab him. So tight end is the number 1 for me. That's what I'll be paying the most attention to when teams cut their guy, just because you got to find somebody behind Dalton Schultz and I suppose Andrew Beck. I see the Texans trading Mills for draft capital and keeping E.J. Perry. I do not see that. If Perry's on the practice squad, I'd be surprised, but I just don't see it with E.J. Perry. Yeah, he had a nice preseason finale. What does Nico need to do to have a successful season, in your opinion? It starts with stay healthy for the whole year. Play 17 damn games. And he said as much. Be healthy. That's the first one. And the second one is if he just translates practice to the Sundays, he's going to be just fine. I'd like to see him be the number 1 receiver on this team. That I don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think that'd be too much to ask. Is the number 1 wide receiver for this team. What does that look like? 1,000 yards would be awesome. Successful for Nico starts with 17 games. And then from 17 games, you can start parsing through the statistics to figure out exactly what is success for Nico. No, I don't believe either Davis Mills or Case Keenum's losing their roster spot. Green was also the worst lineman on the second unit. Yeah, not great. Not great. Since CJ and Tank are clicking, the old WWE term, will they be QB wide receiver 1 duo combo? RIP Bray Wyatt. Yeah, that was a sad for wrestling fans to see Bray Wyatt pass away the other day. That was sad. Will they be the top guys? So that's who I'd bet on. If you could bet on Stroud and Dell as the top combo amongst the Texans combos, that's who I'd bet on. Amongst all the rookies and their wide receiver one, I mean, it's tough to not take Bryce and Thielen just because of the experience. You know? Sean, Nico feels like he'll top out at 800, 900 yards, not a 1,200-yard guy. I tend to agree with you. Nico Collins, to me, his ceiling is wide receiver 2 on a team. I don't believe he has wide receiver 1 potential. 11 Bravo, appreciate you showing up. Rick says 7 or 8 wins this year would make me happy. Anything more is cream gravy on my chicken fried steak. That's a good way to put it, Rick. That's a good way to put it. Feel like a genius drafting Tank Dell real late in my 12 DraftKings best ball leagues. Oh, you're a DraftKings guy? I'm an underdog guy myself, underdog fantasy. Be on the lookout for underdog fantasy here in the next couple weeks. And then Nick says, do you think Tank will be a valuable fantasy football asset? Yes. I don't know how exactly to approach playing him early on in the season, but I believe it'll be pretty clear if Tank's going to take that step in the regular season. I believe it'll be pretty clear when Tank Dell should be inserted into your lineups. In fact, I talked about the fantasy draft. I'm in with my good buddy Landry Locker, who's also on YouTube covering the Texans. If you haven't checked out his channel, please check out his channel. He drafted Tank Dell and stole him from me because I had planned to take Tank Dell. So Landry has Tank Dell in the fantasy league that I'm in with Landry. Sean, I like the look of the backup fullback. Can't remember his name, but he made some good blocks. That's Dalton Keene. And Keene feels like the type of guy that is a practice squad candidate. I don't believe he's played much fullback in his career. But it's a nice job by him to get in here, play some fullback while Andrew Beck's been out. Do you think Stingley can be better than Sauce Gardner? Yes. Can he? Yes. Is that a very difficult thing to achieve at this point? Very difficult. And that might be underselling how hard that is. Very difficult. But yes, it's possible. Zach, I had so much hope for Mechie. He seems to be an afterthought. Never hear his name. I think he just needs more time. Or is it really going to be a third option on this team? Yeah, just it hasn't clicked yet. He needs more time. It hasn't clicked yet. He just needs more time. Okay. All right. Let's one more from Nick. Do you think Boone has a shot at claiming running back 2 spot? No. And if you're thinking about fantasy football, don't draft Mike Boone. It's Pierce and then Singletary. All right, housekeeping. Be looking in the descriptions. This is the time where we'll start coming through with some raffle information. This is the time we'll start coming through with the before the season starts get together that we've been talking about with the YouTube people as well as the Houston football. And if you haven't, please hit the thumbs up on this video down below. It helps the channel a tremendous amount. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please think about giving it a subscription. And of course, check out Houston football in the description down below, www.houfootball.com. We have a ton of fun stuff planned for you. Cut down day is going to be nuts. As players get cut, if there's a player or players that try to pop up, either on Twitter at Cody_Stoots, Twitter/X, whatever it's called now, and even on Houston football, we'll throw together some names there as guys start to pop up and make a lot of sense for the Texans. So be paying attention to that as well. And to finish up this show each and every time the same way. It's my charge to you, but it's also my hope for you as well. If you know it, you know what I'm about to say. And if it's your first time here for the finish to the show, I very much hope that you eat good, sleep good, and be good. And we'll talk Texans again soon. Thank you, everybody.